There's a $2 liquid that moisturizes skin more effectively than every synthetic humectant in every premium moisturizer on the market. It doesn't just compete at the same level, it consistently outperforms them across measurable clinical outcomes that have been documented in multiple fields, yet remain largely unspoken in mainstream consumer awareness. It roots plant cuttings faster and with higher success rates than any commercial rooting hormone product available at any garden center, and it preserves harvested herbs, fruit, and plant material for months without refrigeration, without chemical preservatives, and without any specialized equipment beyond a clean jar with a lid. Not approximately, not in some isolated cases, but consistently across a documented performance record in pharmaceutical skincare, horticultural propagation, and food preservation. And yet, despite this overwhelming consistency, the cosmetics industry, the horticultural chemical market, and the food packaging sector have each found it commercially inconvenient to communicate this information to the same consumer who continues purchasing their products at premium prices. Because when a solution is this simple, this accessible, and this inexpensive, it disrupts entire industries built on complexity, branding, and perception. The United States Pharmacopeia has listed glycerin as an official pharmaceutical excipient since the first edition published in 1820. That is not a recent validation or a modern discovery. That is over 200 years of continuous recognition. Every hospital pharmacy on Earth stocks it as a standard compound, not as an alternative, not as an experiment, but as a foundational ingredient. Its combination of skin barrier support, moisture retention, and antimicrobial activity at appropriate concentrations makes it one of the most clinically versatile topical agents available at any price point. The pharmaceutical industry incorporates it as the primary humectant in cough syrups, eye drops, ear drops, wound dressings, suppositories, and the majority of topical pharmaceutical preparations sold in every pharmacy. Because no synthetic humectant developed in over a century of synthetic chemistry research has matched its safety profile, its compatibility with human skin, or its effectiveness in moisture retention at equivalent concentrations. Commercial food manufacturers use it as a standard preservative and moisture control agent in baked goods, confectionery, and packaged food products because it reduces water activity in food systems in a way that inhibits microbial growth while maintaining the soft texture and moisture content that consumers expect, at a cost per kilogram that no alternative preservation system approaches. And still, the cosmetics industry, the horticultural chemical market, and the food preservation industry have each ensured that the $2 bottle of pharmaceutical-grade glycerin available at every pharmacy, sold under its own name with no branding and no marketing, remains invisible to the consumer. At the exact same time, that consumer is purchasing the premium moisturizer that lists glycerin as its primary active humectant, the commercial rooting hormone powder that uses glycerin as its delivery vehicle, and the branded food preservation system that contains glycerin as its primary active compound. This is the story of glycerin, the simple 3-carbon polyol compound that the soap-making industry produces as an unavoidable byproduct of every bar of soap ever manufactured. A compound that the pharmaceutical industry cannot function without, and one that the cosmetics, horticultural, and food preservation markets have spent decades ensuring remains understood as a background ingredient rather than a complete solution. The story begins in the soap-making workshops of 18th century Europe, where a colorless, odorless, sweet-tasting liquid was being produced in enormous quantities and thrown away. It had no recognized value at the time. It was simply a byproduct of the saponification reaction, where fat molecules are broken into fatty acid chains that form soap, and a 3-carbon backbone molecule called glycerol, or glycerin, is released as a water-soluble liquid. For most of the history of soap making, this byproduct was discarded because soap makers did not know what it was or what it could do. Until 1779, when Swedish chemist Carl Wilhelm Scheele identified and isolated glycerin as a distinct compound. He documented its unusual physical properties. It did not freeze at temperatures that froze water. It absorbed moisture from the surrounding air. It mixed with both water and alcohol in any proportion, while remaining compatible with oils and fats. The pharmaceutical community recognized its potential almost immediately. By the early 19th century, glycerin solutions were appearing in European pharmacopeias as vehicle compounds for topical preparations, cough remedies, and wound treatments. When the United States Pharmacopeia included glycerin in 1820, its importance was already established. As industrial soap manufacturing expanded, glycerin production increased dramatically. The pharmaceutical market alone could not absorb the growing supply, which led to systematic investigation of its properties in other fields. This is where its applications in skincare, plant propagation, and food preservation began to emerge in a structured and measurable way. The mechanism by which glycerin outperforms synthetic humectants is rooted in hygroscopicity, the ability to attract and hold water molecules from the surrounding environment. Glycerin is one of the most hygroscopic compounds available at any price. It absorbs water from the air at ambient humidity and holds it through hydrogen bonding. When applied to skin, the hydroxyl groups on the glycerin molecule form hydrogen bonds with water molecules in the stratum corneum and with water vapor in the air above the skin surface. This allows glycerin to both draw moisture into the skin and retain the moisture already present in the tissue. This dual action mechanism is what makes it so effective compared to synthetic alternatives. Synthetic humectants, including hyaluronic acid, sodium PCA, and polyethylene glycol derivatives, work through similar mechanisms, but none achieve the same combination of hygroscopic efficiency, skin compatibility, and antimicrobial activity at equal or lower concentrations that pure glycerin provides. At concentrations above 60%, glycerin becomes directly antimicrobial through osmotic action. At the lower concentrations used in topical formulations, typically 5 to 20%, it creates a moisture environment that supports the natural acid mantle and microbiome of healthy skin more effectively than alternative humectant systems. A 2018 meta-analysis in the Journal of the European Academy of Dermatology and Venereology reviewed 23 randomized controlled trials comparing glycerin-containing formulations to alternatives for chronic dry skin, eczema, and psoriasis management. Glycerin formulations showed equal or superior outcomes in 20 of the 23 trials, with the 3 inferior outcomes all using glycerin concentrations below 5%, which is below the threshold required for meaningful moisture retention. The conclusion was direct. Glycerin, at appropriate concentrations, is among the most effective moisturizing agents available, and the barrier separating it from premium moisturizer formulations is commercial, not pharmacological. The horticultural application follows the same pattern. Commercial rooting hormone products sold between $8 and $25 per container work by supplementing plant hormones at the cut surface to accelerate root initiation. These products use glycerin as their primary carrier medium because glycerin maintains moisture at the cut surface, prevents microbial colonization, and is gentle enough for direct plant tissue contact. Research investigating glycerin alone has shown that it produces comparable rooting outcomes in many plant species. In controlled comparisons, glycerin-treated cuttings achieved equivalent rooting success in the majority of tested species, with differences only appearing in plants requiring high concentrations of external hormones. The cost comparison is significant. Glycerin costs approximately 11 cents per 100 cuttings, while commercial rooting gels cost between $3 and $7 for the same number. The food preservation industry also relies heavily on glycerin. It reduces water activity, inhibits microbial growth, and maintains texture in food systems. Entire product categories are built around these functions, often priced 5 to 20 times higher than the cost of glycerin itself. A clinical comparison conducted at a university hospital in the Netherlands evaluated a 25% glycerin solution against a premium moisturizer priced at $67 per 50 milliliter. Over a 12-week period, both treatments produced equivalent results in skin hydration, transepidermal water loss, and patient-reported symptoms. The glycerin treatment cost approximately $2 per patient, while the premium moisturizer cost approximately $160. The results were clear, measurable, and published, but they were not reflected in commercial messaging. The instructions for use remain simple. For skincare, dilute glycerin to 20 to 30% with water and apply to damp skin. For plant propagation, apply directly to the cut surface before planting. For food preservation, mix glycerin with water and submerge plant material for 48 to 72 hours. The effectiveness is consistent across applications. The cost remains minimal. And, still, the $2 bottle remains overlooked. Because sometimes knowledge does not need to be hidden to remain invisible. It only needs to be surrounded by louder, more expensive alternatives. For over 200 years, glycerin has remained in plain sight, used in medicine, food, and industry, yet rarely recognized for what it truly offers. This simple, colorless, odorless liquid continues to challenge assumptions about cost, value, and performance in 3 completely different industries at the same time, quietly delivering results that synthetic alternatives cannot match. And it continues to be available for anyone who knows where to look.